Have you ever felt that particular kind of fear that doesn't come from a sudden disaster, but from a slow, creeping loss? The kind that builds day by day until you wake up one morning and realize you have nothing left. And the people coming to collect are not strangers. They have a legal right to take what little you have. Welcome back to our journey through the Bible. Today's story is of a widow who awoke not to a single catastrophe, but a slow unraveling of her life. In her culture, women had almost no financial protection. She was facing a debt she couldn't pay and a threat she couldn't outrun. But she knew one thing. She knew where to go. And what happened next is one of the most remarkable portraits of God's provision in all of Scripture. She was the wife of one of the prophets, a man devoted to serving God. Now he was dead. The Bible doesn't give us his name or many details, just enough to feel her loss. His death hadn't just broken her heart. It had destroyed her security. While her husband was alive, they had taken on a debt. We don't know why, but now the creditor had come not with sympathy, but with a demand. He was going to take her 2 sons as debt slaves to work off what was owed. She was about to lose not just her husband, but her children too. This is the weight she carried when she went to the prophet Elisha. "Your servant's husband is dead," she said, "and you know that your servant feared the Lord." She wasn't just stating facts. She was making a case. This man was one of God's own, and now his family was in crisis. She didn't despair. She came with faith, believing God had something to say. Elisha's response was immediate and practical. Not a sermon on suffering, but a simple question. What do you have in your house? Not what do you need, but what do you have? Because what God was about to do wouldn't come from nothing. It would start with what was already in her hands. She thought for a moment. "Your servant has nothing there at all," she replied, "except a small jar of olive oil." Except that one word carries the whole story. At the very bottom of her emptiness, there was one small thing left. She hadn't thrown it away. It was small, but it was enough. Elisha's instructions were simple, almost strange. Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars, and don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, set it to one side. She had to go door to door, asking for empty containers. It meant being seen in her most vulnerable state. Pride could have stopped her, but she obeyed. Then she was told to shut the door. This miracle wasn't going to be a public spectacle. It was for a mother and her sons, alone in a room with the word of a prophet ringing in their ears. So she picked up that small jar of oil and began to pour, and it filled the first jar. She moved to the next, and it filled, and the next, and the next. Her sons, the very boys whose freedom was at stake, kept bringing her jars. There was a holy, quiet rhythm. Bring a jar, pour, set it aside, full. Then, one of her sons said, "There is not a jar more." They had run out of empty jars, and the oil stopped. The oil didn't run dry. It stopped because they ran out of jars. The limiting factor wasn't God's supply. It was their capacity to receive. The provision was proportional to their preparation. God wasn't being stingy. The oil was ready to keep flowing. The limitation was on their end, a reflection of how big they had dared to believe. This isn't a guilt trip. It's an invitation. God is saying, bring more jars. Come with bigger expectations. I am not the one who runs out first. She went back to Elisha. Go, sell the oil and pay your debts, he said. You and your sons can live on what is left. Debt paid, sons free, family intact, and oil to spare. The crisis was over. So, what is the jar in your house today? What small, seemingly insufficient thing have you been dismissing? God doesn't start with what's missing. He starts with what's present. He used a boy's lunch to feed 5,000. He used a shepherd's staff to part a sea. He is not intimidated by your small beginnings. He's asking you the same question. What do you have in your house? And notice, this miracle was private. Elisha told her to close the door. God is the God of the shut door. He shows up in the rooms no one else is invited into. If you're in a hidden season where it feels like nothing is happening, that doesn't mean he isn't at work. Sometimes the pouring happens behind closed doors. The widow came with almost nothing and left with more than enough. She came in crisis and left in peace. God has not changed. He is still the God who multiplies the small things. He is still the God who fills every jar you are willing to bring. So don't ask for just a few. If this story meant something to you, please share it. And if you're new here, we tell Bible stories like this every week, stories that are ancient but alive. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. God bless.